So hello, we were doing labor laws here for EPFO. At the same time, we have already done accounting for EPFO as well as auditing. We'll see other important portions as well, and a lot of very important PDFs will be available on the Telegram. The name is EDUASTRA. If you are unable to find the Telegram channel, do let me know. I'll provide you with the link. So here we'll complete the entire labor laws using these MCQs only, and we have already completed 75 questions. So our 76th question is, in labor jurisprudence, the test to decide whether a contractor's worker is actually servant of the principal employer focuses on economic dependence, control and integration into the employer's operation, the name in the employed contract only, whether the contractor supplies tools, whether the worker is paid in cash. So answer is 1, that is economic dependence, control and integration into the employer's operations. So courts look beyond the contract to the substance, control, supervision, economic dependence to determine whether a contractor's worker is effectively employed by the principal employer. ठीक है, जो आपका worker है, whether that worker is effectively employed by the principal employer or not. Then under the employee's compensation rules, workmen's compensation principles, the employer's liability for fatal injury is subject to no proof of causation, proof of causal connection between employment and injury leading to death, employer's discretion only, statutory immunity for large employers. So the correct answer is 2, proof of causal connection between employment and injury leading to death. Compensation requires causal connection between employment and conditions and injury death. Statutory presumptions may exist, but causation remains central. Which of the following is a key feature of the code on wages that impacts EPF computations? Separate definition for each law remain intact. Unified statutory definition of wages that may affect PF-based calculations if adopted consistently by authorities. Wages now exclude basic pay intentionally, bonus removed entirely. So the answer is 2, that is unified statutory definition of wages that may affect PF-based calculations if adopted consistently by authorities. A unified definition of wages under the code will influence what counts as wages for statutory contributions, potentially impacting EPF calculation components. Which of the following actions by an employer, if found to be an unfair labor practice, can be penalized under the Industrial Dispute Act? Refusal to recognize a registered union without valid reason, conducting a lawful inquiry and disciplinary proceedings fairly, paying statutory entitlements timely, filing lawful references. So the answer is 1, that is refusal to recognize a registered union without valid reason. Arbitrary refusal to recognize a registered union, victimization or anti-union conduct, or listed unfair practices and can attract consequences under the Act. Under the Code on Social Security, gig worker. Who are gig workers? We have discussed it multiple times. You tell me who are gig workers. Is defined to mean an employee on permanent payroll, a person performing work outside a traditional employer-employee relationship, often via an online platform on a gig or task basis. A manager of a company, only worker in manufacturing. So the answer is 2. A person performing work outside a traditional employer-employee relationship, often via an online platform on gig task basis. Gig is jobs or task. तो गिग बेसिस पे काम होगा ऑनलाइन प्लेटफॉर्म के थ्रू, तो दैट इज़ योर Zomato, Swiggy and so on. Okay, then the code defines gig workers as individual performing such task-based work typically facilitated by digital platforms and not necessarily fitting the traditional employer-employee paradigm. Under the ESI scheme, which of the following benefits is not ordinarily provided? Medical benefit, sickness benefit, pension for old age as a comprehensive pension scheme. ESI focuses on temporary disablement and other benefits. Maternity benefit. So the answer is 3, that is pension for old age as comprehensive pension scheme. ESI focuses on temporary disablement and other benefits. So ESIC provides medical sickness, maternity disablement and dependent benefits, but it is not designed primarily as an old age pension scheme like EPS, EPFO, EPS provides pension functions. Under the Payment of Gratuity Act, which of the following affects the calculation of gratuity amount? So इनमें से क्या affect करता है? Last drawn basic pay and dearness allowance not performing part of basic pay if not ordinarily paid, continuous service period, that is years of service, or all of the above. So that is for all of the above. Gratuity computations uses last drawn basic plus dearness allowance as wage and considers qualifying years of service. Non-regular allowance are excluded unless they form part of wage by law or practice. Then under the Factories Act, the manager of a factory is required to notify the appropriate authority within how many hours of any notifiable accident subject to rules. So if something goes wrong in the factory, then within how many hours appropriate authority should be notified? 24, 48, 72 as per state rules, commonly within 24 hours for serious accidents. So answer is 4 as per state rules, commonly within 24 hours for serious accidents. The Act and state rules prescribes prompt reporting of notifiable accidents usually within 24 hours, but precise timeline can be state specific. Immediate reporting is mandated. In EPFO matters, when a dispute as to applicability of PF arises, the competent forum to approach initially is typically Labor Court Tribunal for adjudicatory matters after statutory procedures, or the designated adjudicatory mechanism like the appellate structure under EPF Act, Criminal Court directly, Civil Court without exhaustion of statutory remedies, municipality. So the answer is 1, that Labor Court Tribunal for adjudicatory matters after statutory procedures, or the designated adjudicatory mechanism like the appellate structure under EPF Act. So EPF disputes are resolved through statutory mechanisms such as 7A proceedings, appellate tribunals, and where appropriate labor courts, tribunals or high courts, writ jurisdiction. Which of the following is not a feature of the Standing Orders Act? Requires employers to define conditions of employment and disciplinary procedures. Standing orders must be certified by certifying officer and published. Standing orders bind both employer and workmen once certified. Standing orders apply to managerial staff only. So the answer is 4, that is standing orders applied to managerial staff only. Standing orders apply mainly to workmen and define service conditions. Managerial staff with supervisory powers are generally excluded from standing orders provisions. So one thing is you have to pay attention to these words also. Okay, not because what happens in exam is you directly see the Standing Orders Act and you will find which one of these is the correct statement, and then you will find more than one correct statement, and then you will either leave this or will make a wild guess and mark any one of these. Okay, so pay attention to the question as well, whether not is written or not. So Workmen Committee is primarily a bipartite consultative forum to promote industrial peace and discuss matters of common interest. Adjudication forum with binding powers, a criminal investigative body, a department under Ministry of Labor. So first is the correct answer. Bipartite consultative forum to promote industrial peace and discuss matters of common interest. Works committee are consultative bodies consisting of employer and worker representatives aimed at improving relation and resolving minor issues before escalation. Which of the following is the correct order of disputes resolution ladder usually followed under labor law? Conciliation, arbitration, adjudication, adjudication, conciliation, arbitration, strike, adjudication, arbitration, or arbitration, strike, conciliation. So CAA, first option, conciliation, arbitration, adjudication is the right answer. CAA. The usual sequence is attempt conciliation first, resort to arbitration, voluntary or binding, if parties agree, and finally adjudication by labor courts, tribunals if necessary. Which one of the following is not a function of labor inspector under labor statutes? To enter premises and examine records, to conduct criminal trials and sentence offenders, to issue improvement notice and initiate prosecution, to seize documents and evidence where permitted by law. So correct answer is second, that is to conduct criminal trials and sentence offenders. Inspectors can investigate, seize records, issue notice and initiate prosecutions, but they do not conduct trial or sentence. Those are judicial functions, obviously. Police can investigate, collect evidences, but they cannot grant pardon or give you punishment. That is the work of our judiciary. Under the Industrial Dispute Act, conciliation proceedings are generally conducted by a judge of the High Court, an appointed conciliation officer, the central government only, the police. So an appointed conciliation officers appointed by the appropriate government handle conciliatory proceedings attempting to settle disputes through negotiation. Under EPF rules, which of these actions is normally required when an employer merges or takes over another company? No action account remains separate. Follow statutory procedure for transfer, merger, intimation to EPFO and ensure continuity transfer to EPF accounts for employees. Liquidation on all EPF accounts immediately. Employer must withhold all contributions permanently. So the answer is to follow statutory procedure for transfer, merger, intimation to EPFO and ensure continuity transfer of EPF accounts for employees. So corporate restructurings require compliance with EPFO rules to secure members' accounts, contributions and continuity of benefits. Under the Code on Social Security, the term unorganized worker generally covers worker employed in organized factories only, self-employed and those without regular employment relationships, working in informal sector, managers of big companies or government officers. So very easy, it's to self-employed and those without regular employment relationship working in informal sector. The code aims to cover unorganized workers, agricultural labor, casual workers, home-based, self-employed and other lacking formal employment protection. Under POSH, who can be an external member of the Internal Complaints Committee? ठीक है, who can be a family member of the employer, a person from NGO or association familiar with women's issues and social work, a co-worker who is friend of respondent, the employer's lawyer. So the answer is obviously 2, can be seen very clearly, a person from NGO or association familiar with women's issue and social work. The external members should bring independence and knowledge in gender issues. The Act specifies NGO, social worker, legal expert as suitable external member. ठीक है, तो point of external member is definitely okay, but who can be that external member? That also needs your attention. So that is a social worker, NGO worker, legal expert and so on. Then under the EPF scheme, what is the general effect of judicial decisions that hold certain allowances to be part of basic wages? They have no practical effect. They can increase the PF-able salary base, thereby increasing employer and employee contributions and consequential liabilities for back contributions if earlier excluded. They often affect bonus calculation. They automatically change tax treatment. So they can increase the PF-able salary base, thereby increasing employer and employee contributions and consequential liabilities for back contributions if earlier excluded. Judicial inclusion of allowances in wages can raise the EPF base, affecting past liabilities and future contributions, often leading to recovery orders. In labor law, the doctrine of constructive dismissal refers to employer formally dismissing worker by notice. Employer's conduct making continued employment intolerable, forcing worker to resign, treated as dismissal. Resignation for personal reasons only. Dismissal only if retrenchment benefits paid. So employers conduct making continued employment intolerable, forcing worker to resign, treated as dismissal. Constructive dismissal occurs when employer conduct compels an employee to resign. Tribunals may treat it as wrongful dismissal deserving relief. So that is a wrongful dismissal. गलत तरीके से किया हुआ dismiss. Under the Code on Wages, overtime payment rate is generally at least the rate of basic wage per hour, at least twice the ordinary rate of wages subject to rules, at least half the ordinary rate, no statutory minimum. So answer is 2, that is at least twice the ordinary rate of wages subject to rules. Overtime rates are typically at least twice the ordinary rates, but exact rates may be governed by code rules and apply per hour day calculation. The EPF inspector's power during inspection normally include entering premises during reasonable hours, examining records and verifying contributions, and initiating proceedings for default, arbitrarily firing employees, passing criminal sentences, issuing marriage certificates. So answer is 1, entering premises during reasonable hours, examining records and verifying contributions, and initiating proceedings for default. Again, in this as well, answer was very clear. So in exam also, you will find very easy questions related to these core topics: accounting, auditing, social security, insurance, and this labor laws. So if you have gone through the content once, you will be able to mark the correct answer very easily. Inspectors have statutory authority to ensure compliance, check registers, call for record, and initiate recovery or prosecution where necessary. Judicial powers remain with courts. Under the Factories Act, a crèche is mandatory where the number of women workers employed is, so again previous year का question, 10, 20, 30 और 50. So answer is 30. Factories Act के अंदर क्रेच कहाँ पे मैंडेटरी है, कितने नंबर ऑफ women workers होना चाहिए? So the answer is 30. The Factories Act prescribes crèche facility when a factory employs 30 or more women, aiming to provide welfare support to women workers. We have already done this question twice. So still if you are marking this wrong, then sir there is nothing to say. Okay, so keep this in mind. The answer is 30. Very, very important. Which of the following actions by a trade union is protected under law? So first, peaceful collective bargaining and lawful strike procedures, Gherav with violence, intimidating non-union workers, burning factory property. So answer is first, that is peaceful collective bargaining and lawful strike procedures. Lawful and peaceful union activities including collective bargaining are protected. Violent or coercive practices are unlawful and may constitute unlawful labor practices. Then under the Payment of Bonus Act, the bonus ceiling for calculation of maximum bonuses as per statutory ceiling subject to amendments and notifications. 5,000 per month, 7,000 per month or wage ceiling specified by law, 10,000 per month or there is no ceiling. So the correct answer is second, that is 7,000 per month or wage ceiling specified by law. The Act sets a wage ceiling for bonus computations. Historically 7,000 per month or minimum wage, whichever is higher. Okay, what? Whichever is higher. Statutory amendments or rules may adjust ceilings. In EPF context, the principle of beneficial legislation implies protective statutes for employees should be interpreted strictly against employees. Statutes like EPF should be interpreted liberally to advance employee welfare and coverage where ambiguity exists. Employers have absolute discretion to interpret statutes. Legislation should not be applied. So the correct answer is 2, that is statutes like EPF should be interpreted liberally to advance employee welfare and coverage where ambiguity exists. So courts often treat social security laws as beneficial and interpret doubtful provisions liberally in favor of employees to further protective legislative objectives. Then which of the following correctly defines retrenchment under section 200 of the Industrial Dispute Act 1947? Termination is a punishment, voluntary retirement, termination for any reason other than punishment, or termination due to superannuation. So you tell me what is the correct answer for this. Otherwise in the next we'll start with this. If you need any other resource, do let me know. I'll try to provide with the same. Otherwise you will find a lot of resources related to this exam as well as the other exams on the Telegram channel. The name is EDU ASTRA. If you are unable to find it, do let me know. I'll provide you with the link. So that's it in this. All the very best and thank you.